What's up, everybody? We're back.
Yeah! Hey, welcome back to the Metalhead's Journey. Hey, so listen, there's probably one of you out there that ever stick around long enough to hear us do the outro of the show. And for that one person, thank you. We appreciate that. But you may ask yourself, because I often reference Metal Time Machines in that little outro, but you may ask yourself, what is a metal time machine? I never hear them do metal time machines. Okay, listen, it was a failed experiment a while back. We tried it. It didn't really work for us. But
we're bringing it back.
On the recent trip to go see
Love Bites.
Love Bites, we decided to bring it back in a way that made sense to fit the show. So here's the deal. Here's the premise. We are going to do albums from the last 40 years, okay?
But
we have a wheel of doom that we spin to give us the year and the album that's on it, okay? But here's the deal. You might say, okay, great. So you guys are going to do like the best album from the last 40 years. So you're going to do Master of Puppets, and you're going to do Operation Mindcrime, and you're going to do insert terrible Death album here. I'm just joking. Death is fantastic, all right? They're great. They got great scores. They're like in the top 6 of the metal albums that we did in the top 50. Anyway, Dave, calm down. Anyway, you may ask yourself, you guys are obviously going to do the number 1 album from each year, right? No, we're not, okay? Because if you've watched the show at all, you know that we have this affinity for the number 4. There's 4 of us on the show. When we do brackets, we spin brackets not 3 times, not 5 times, but 4 times. So we are going to do the 4th best album from whatever year it lands on. Which brings us here today.
Yeah,
we are doing the album, or we are checking out a band for the first time here on the show called Paradise Lost. This album is 1993's Icon. And how cool is this? What kind of a quinky dink is this? That the last album we did last week was an album called Paradise Lost.
Yeah,
and now we're doing a band called Paradise Lost. So that's cool. So anyway, that's a long way of telling you, welcome to Metalhead's Journey. We are doing our first Metal Time Machine this week. So this is 1993's Icon from the band Paradise Lost. Let me do a history of the band and we'll get right into the review. Paradise Lost, formed in 1988, is an English gothic metal band from Halifax, West Yorkshire. They are considered to be among the pioneers of death doom genre and regarded as the main influence for the later gothic metal movement. The band has released 16 studio albums, including Obsidian, which was released in 2020. And it sounds like they're working on new music right now. As of 2005, Paradise Lost has sold over 2 million records worldwide. Icon, released in 1993, is the band's 4th studio album. It marked a departure from the death doom sound of their early work and was the last album to feature Matthew Archer on drums. The album featured no singles. So, you know, we were driving back from Dallas, and we started talking about this idea. And, you know, man, this list is going to take us in a million different directions. And happily, we're off to a good start. I thought this was a really cool record. You know, look, it's in the vein of a couple. I kept thinking about a couple different bands when I heard this. All right, there's some moments that sound kind of Danzig-ish. There's some moments that like you can hear how they influenced groups like Marilyn Manson. But I kept coming back to the more of the doom metal sound that it had, and I kept coming back to Corrosion of Conformity as like the band I kept hearing in my head. I thought this record was, I think it's well made. It's, even though it's 13 tracks, it's a little fat for what it is, but it's not super long. So I mean, none of the songs really stick around too long or longer than they should. Good guitar work on the record. I think for me, like if I was going to be critical of the record, I would just say like maybe we find a new vocalist. But I mean, he along with Gregor McIntosh are the like the primary. Was it Gregory McIntosh?
Gregor.
Gregor. Okay. I thought I had a mistype. They're like the primary songwriters. So, I don't know how much of the album he contributed to musically. So, maybe that plays into it. But, the vocals, and the more I got into the album, the less and less I thought about the vocals. Like, it just became just kind of like a whatever thing. Like, it wasn't distracting or anything like that. But, there were moments where I thought, like, Pepper Keenan from Corrosion of Conformity could do really well on this record. John Bush from Anthrax and Armored Saint would do really well on this record. So there were some moments where I was really wishing that we could have had a more accomplished vocalist on the record. But overall, I enjoyed it. I like the vibe of the record. It's definitely not up tempo at all. Very, very much a mid tempo record. And I like that. I like my metal kind of in that genre. I like thrash, but I just like to kind of be in this tempo and be able to headbang. So overall, I was happy with it. I thought it was a hell of a start. Jonah, what'd you think?
I agree. I thought the whole album was kind of a vibe. Like it sounded very much like a '90s album. And I'm actually going to disagree with you on the vocals. I thought they were great. It did remind me a bit of some other artists, but I think that's contributing to like the '90s vibe that I was getting from it. It definitely sounds like a '90s like vocal style that was probably popular back then. But yeah, I mean, the album's heavy. But it's not like super overproduced or anything. Like it sounds like not like garage band levels, but like it's got like a warmth and like a fuzz to it that I don't know. It's hard to describe.
It's very much, not to cut you off, I apologize, but it's very much like a '90s record. Like a lot of the albums in the '90s like sound like this.
Exactly.
You can put them side by side, and they all kind of have this. Like today, it's very overproduced,
like digital.
Yeah, So like this to your point, just kind of has that feeling like it was recorded in a studio with like 4 or 5 mics. Sounds like they could have done it all together. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
And that contributed to like kind of I guess like the warm fuzzy feeling it gave me, for lack of a better term, because I'm super nostalgic for the '90s, and this definitely reminded me of that. On top of that, like I don't pay super attention to lyrics or anything like that, but like the songwriting style, in my opinion, it felt very like they weren't like making music to be popular necessarily. It felt like they were making music because they wanted to make music, and I appreciate that. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I think Nick Holmes' vocals fit well. To your point, though, I do think there could have been more. Like it was missing a little something. Like it wasn't very melodic, and I'm a big fan of melodic vocals. So I do agree with that specific criticism vocally. But overall, I enjoyed it. I thought the album sounded great.
Yeah, I'll go in. I'll go in here. I don't think my score is going to reflect how I talk about this record, because I think in the interest of not just spouting off some of the same stuff that you guys are saying, I think I want to take a little bit more of a counterpoint just to make things a little bit more interesting. Because I feel like I am a little bit more critical of this record than at least the two of you. Specifically in the vocals, I have to completely disagree with Jonah on this. I was not a fan of the vocals. It's fine, but I think the vocals are easily the weakest point for me of the entire band.
I agree.
The guys are going to give me crap for this because I said this before we went live, but I just feel like he sings off key at times. That just doesn't, like, his vocals don't fit like the way the music is playing or like what the music sounds like. And I'm sure that's a stylistic choice, and I'm sure
I feel like it is.
I'm sure that was on purpose, and I'm sure that endears them to a certain audience. Obviously, they've been doing this for a long time, so they're successful. But for me, like, with as strong as the guitar work or the riffs are, I think it's just a shame, in my opinion, that like what we could have gotten was with a different vocal style, or even just a better vocalist in general. And obviously, this is subjective. I think we could have gotten something that I would have personally enjoyed a lot more. Obviously, it wouldn't have sounded nearly the same.
No.
But just for me, like Nick's vocals just didn't do anything for me. And it's funny because there were moments in some of the songs where I feel like I got it, like the vocals worked, but it was not all the time, and it was definitely not on every song. Like,
probably some of the more aggressive moments. That's what I felt like they stood out for me.
Yeah, like there's songs on here that really just, to me, just begged for a melodic vocalist or someone with some more range. And look, Nick may have that range. I only know them from this one album, right? He may have that range. There may be other albums that they've showcased different vocal styles. I have no idea, right? But on this, it's like he sang in the same, it felt like nearly the same key in almost every song. And it's just like, that hurt my overall experience of the album. I'm going to pull a Jason from last week. This album worked best for me when I just had it on and I was just doing my thing. That's when this album, to me, was at its best. The album suffered the more I actually paid attention to it. And I think a large part of that for me was the vocals. Like, I think the guitar work and the drums and like the songs themselves, even the lyrics were not the problem. I think the vocals held it back like greatly for me.
That's
All
super
right.
interesting.
For me, this album is one of the reasons why I like doing this, what we're doing, this Metalhead's Journey, because each of us are experiencing this album for the first time. I'm not sure if any of us had ever even heard of this band before in our lives.
Nope.
And I'm a little bit older. This would be right in my wheelhouse back in 93 or 92,
Yeah,
whenever this came
93.
out. I listened to a lot of Danzig. I listened to a lot of this like slower tempo, doomy stuff. Even Typo Negative, etc. If Danzig and Typo Negative had a baby, this is Paradise Lost, with a little bit of Godsmack in some of the songs.
Yes.
I would say that while I'm not a huge fan of the vocalist, I think it fits this just right. I don't know if he could actually pull off any other things because I've never heard of this guy before. I've never heard of this band before. I don't know anything else from their catalog, to what Dave said. So I don't know if his vocal style would work in any other style of music, but for me, it works in this. But this is one of those situations where we get something new, and for the most part, we're all like, "Holy shit, this is really cool." So this is one of those gems, and I hope it doesn't ruin the next 39 years. And this ends up being like the best album that we end up checking out. But I really enjoyed it. And to Dave's point, I usually listen to when we do these. I usually listen to it first in the background. And the more I listened to this, the more I liked it, and the more I paid attention to it, the more I liked it. Today alone, I probably listened to this album somewhere between 6 and 8 times before I listened to it the last time and gave it my scores. I have no problem listening to this entire album start to finish in the background or paying attention to it. I was pretty much blown away by how much I enjoyed this album, considering that nobody had ever heard of this band before.
Yeah.
Nice. Who's your MVP for the record, Fossil?
Dual MVPs only because just on my research, I'm not sure who gets more credit, but the guitar work by Greg McIntosh and Aaron Eddy. From what I understand, McIntosh gets more of the credits, but I liked all of the guitar work. I loved the heavy riff, chuggy sections. I thought the solos were really good and fit well.
They really did have good solos. I mean, surprisingly for the genre.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was a lot of undercurrent riffs that were just kind of thrown under other sections, under like heavy riffs coming out of like the solos or going into the bridge sections and stuff. Just stuff that was just like layered underneath that I could hear. So I was like, oh man, that sounds so fucking good. So all the guitar work is my favorite.
Yeah, I'll go
Yeah.
next just because it's going to be the exact same. Gregor and Aaron, easily the MVPs for me.
Jonah?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to agree, but I'm still gonna die on this hill. I think y'all are giving Nick Holmes way too much crap. I think he was a second for me for sure.
All right. Yeah, I had Gregor McIntosh as well. I just singled him out. Just being the primary songwriter of the two guitar players, I think gave him like just the bump for me.
Yeah.
But the guitar work on the album is excellent. Anybody have a hot take on the record? All right,
No, not
moving,
really.
moving into top tracks.
Yeah.
So I'll go first here. I do have an honorable mention this week. True Belief, honorable mention. Cool song, good vibe, good riffs to it. Number 3 for me, the intro, Ember's Fire, the first song. I love songs that like just open up and they leave like that, like just they have an open note and they got like this vibe going. It's like bow, and you get the little drums coming in and it's like a whole thing. I like that. Shallow Seasons, dude, just nasty riff late in the album with some good aggressive vocals on top of it, dude. Just a fucking headbanger.
Mhm.
But number 1 by a mile, and I thought this song was fucking great, is Poison. Love Poison, love the riff. Like, dude, that's these 4 songs are all going into like just my overall playlist.
Jonah,
What you got?
Interesting. So I do have an honorable mention as well. It's going to be Colossal Rain. That song is super moody. The chorus really grew on me because as I was listening to it in the background, he repeats, the same line over and over again. And on my first like playthrough, I was like, "What the hell's going on?" Like I had to stop and do a double take. But as I listened to it more, like I said, it grew on me. It's almost got kind of like a breakdown in between the choruses as well. I think it's a really good song. Um, Number 3 for me is going to be Forging Sympathy. It's got a really good intro. Again, it just carries that vibe on the rest of the album that I really liked, and it's got a good outro as well. Uh, Number 2 is going to be Shallow Seasons as well.
My man.
I think that song is a jam. The main verse riff lick is really good. There's a couple of songs on here where they do like all of the lyrical stuff first, and then the outro is like the solo or bridge or whatever you want to call it. This is one of them. I thought it's a really interesting choice. And then number 1 for me is actually going to be Christendom. I thought the female vocals that came out of nowhere were really cool.
What?
Yeah, I
wow.
like that song.
Wow.
Oh my god, dude! I won't spoil it, but you're not gonna like my album cuts.
You're not gonna like
I'm not
mine.
gonna like
You're not gonna
yours.
like mine either. You're not gonna like
Yeah.
mine either. So, and I'll say this quickly because I didn't want to cut anybody off earlier, but this is one of the few albums where I'm going to be a hypocrite, where I'm going way more off of feel than like my numbers that I normally go through. So the feel that I got from this album was way higher than what I maybe anticipated or what a lot of you did. So anyway, we'll move on.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'll go. I don't have a honorable mention here. My number 3 is Shallow Seasons. Good song. It actually now that I'm kind of looking at it, I kind of have one pick kind of on each third of the record. But my number 2 is where did my notes go? My number 2 is True Belief. I really like that song, and in fact, depending on the day, True Belief could have been my number 1. But it wasn't my number 1 because I went with the opening track Ember's Fire as the number 1. I really think, like, to me that song like is like they captured everything that the band wanted to do, and like I think it's a very good opening track. It just kind of like that's the stars align type of song for me, where all of the things that I maybe don't love, they work on that song the most. Like vocally, and just the riffs are super strong. But yeah, those 3 songs I think are all bangers.
All right.
All right, I have two honorable mentions, so I'm going to take one of Dave's that he didn't use.
Shit.
Yep, I got two of them. It's Shallow Seasons and Poison. Poison could have been my number 2 song
Should have been.
if it had double bass in it. I'm not kidding. I really like that song, but that song is one of the songs on here that I wish had featured double bass throughout the song. I think it sets up for a double bass the way that the drummer is playing a lot of the sections of it. But my top 3, I have number 3. I have "Dying Freedom." Number 2, "Widow," which if we're gonna have a best riff, has my best riff for the chorus riff.
Widow is pretty solid.
Yeah, it's a banger for me. I love it has a great verse riff, great chorus riff. But my number 1 song, and it really wasn't close. I kept wanting to just listen to it over and over again, and it's "True Belief." I love that song. It is an absolute steal on this album.
All right. Well, next category here. This is where we make our cuts on the record. And as any real metal fan out there knows, the real sweet spot for track listing on these albums is 8 songs. If you get a metal album that has 8 songs on it, it's got a great chance of being a fucking banger. So every show here, we like to try and cut these down to put our top 8 on the record. This album has 13 songs, so we do need to cut 5 tracks on it, which proved to be tougher than I thought it was going to be for me, for sure. Jason, go first.
Yeah.
Give us your 5 cuts here.
This is actually really difficult because I'm not sure, but I think I might have liked this album the best out of all of us. But easiest one is this the last song. I don't even know how to say it.
Deus
instrumental.
Mr. Rooter?
Deus
Deus miss. Not going to miss that song.
Yeah, I'm not going to miss that song. And then, sorry, Jonah, but easily the worst song on the album, "Christendom." Easily cut. After that, it became extremely difficult. But I got "Weeping Wounds." I got "Colossal
Words."
It's words.
Words. Sorry, that "Weeping Words." "Colossal Rain." And after that, it's everything is so close. It ended up being a song that I really, really like, and that's "Poison." And it's
Did he have Poison as an honorable mention?
Yeah, I did. But everything else is so close that "Poison" is the odd man out, only because the double bass that I wanted didn't elevate it high enough.
How can you have it in your 4th spot?
It was his 5th spot, I think.
No.
I mean,
No, it wasn't my 5th spot. It's an honorable mention because it could have been my number 2 song if it had double bass.
Yeah,
Not runner up.
Honorable mention. It's like your 4th song. Yeah.
No, if it was runner up, it would be the 4th.
Yeah,
honorable mention just means it's worth mentioning.
No, I had honorable mention being "Shallow Seasons" and "Poison" if it had double bass.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh
That's
my
fine.
God.
Look, I'll go here because actually I have 3 of the same as Jason, so this is what it is. Deus, not gonna miss that song. I have "Christendom." I have "Weeping Words." Weeping Words.
It's not "Weeping Weeds."
No. And then look, the other 2. I think those are the easiest 3 cuts on the album.
Yes,
for me.
I agree.
Those came pretty much right away. Now the other 2, look, literally, if I could do, like, tomorrow, these other 2 could change. But for the sake of this, I had no choice. So I picked "Dying Freedom" and "Widow." "Widow," I like the song, but there's just certain things about it. I was like, so I cut it. And same thing with "Dying Freedom." It was just like, whatever.
Let me go because I feel like ours are all going to be similar, and Jonah's going to have something totally different here. So I got the instrumental, the last song. I also have Christendom, and I also have Weeping Words. I also have Colossal Reigns. Just meh. The hardest cut for me, the last cut for me, was Forging Sympathy. I thought Forging Sympathy is a really good song, but it just kind of missed the cut for me. Go ahead, Jonah. Give us
right.
the opposite of everybody else's list.
Actually, we do share a lot because this was hard. There's only 2 songs, maybe 3 on here that I would consider absolutely fine, like just barely, over a 5 if we're scoring individually. But in no particular order. So obviously the instrumental track, definitely not Christendom. But I am cutting Widow. For me, that's the only skipper on the album.
Wow.
I am cutting Weeping Words as well. Those 2 for me were the 2 worst tracks on the album.
Yeah.
And then I've got Poison as well. Again, it's not a terrible song. It's not a terrible song, but it's definitely not making the cut. And then last one is going to be Remembrance. Just because I had to pick 5.
Yeah.
But I think Remembrance is a good song as well.
It's so funny because Remembrance, I know I didn't have technically an honorable mention, but I did have. At one point, Remembrance was in my top 3. I did like that song. I do want to say, like, even though we all like struggled to cut or whatever, I do feel like the middle of this record is where it loses me a little bit, and I did notice that's where most of our cuts came from, like the middle, like the
6,
middle,
7, 8, and 9.
Ending.
Yeah. See, I didn't have that experience. Like I thought from start to finish, up until Christendom, like I didn't have a problem at all. Like if you cut those last 2 songs on here, this song, I mean, this album gets an even much higher score.
Yeah, well, like for me, like you cut the last 2 songs, and then you cut like Widow and Weeping Words. Like you cut just 4. Like I know it's technically 8, but if you cut those 4, like 9-song record. Like, dude, this might be something. That.
Well, hey, we're coming up here on the last category. This is where we like to give our score for the record. And just to give you an idea of how we score things, for a lot of folks out there, an average score is a 7. Well, for us, it's a 5. So for anything that's 4.9 and below, that's various levels of we would not recommend the album. Anything 5 and above is various levels of we would recommend the record. And 9 to 10 is basically all-time classic level. Jason, it sounds like you're probably going to be the highest score, so we'll save you for last.
I'll go because I might be the lowest score. I think
it's possible.
So I know I was pretty down on the vocals, but again, or just down on the record in general. Again, part of that is, I want to provide some counterpoints to all the praise, right? So I want to make this not just a glow fest or whatever. So, but I did enjoy the record, and my personal barometer is, is something 8 or above is something I'm regularly going to put on, like that I would actively want to listen to multiple times, in my normal rotation. I don't think this is that for me. I did enjoy the album, but I think it does miss the mark on some key areas. So I came in at a 7.1. I think it's a solid record, but, misses the great mark for me. Just good.
Go ahead, Jonah.
I guess thematically, I actually agree with a lot of what you just said, Dave. I don't think it's a great record. I had a great time listening to it, and because of how it made me feel, I let that influence me way more than I guess my critical brain.
You juice the numbers.
I did juice my numbers. I'm not gonna lie, because if I go straight off the numbers, it's not nearly this high. But I ended up at a 7.3. I think it's really enjoyable. I will definitely listen to the album again. I'm only going to skip probably that one track, and even then, we said it multiple times. This album plays really well in the background if you're doing other things. Like if I'm, doing any of my other nerdy hobbies, having this album on in the background is going to be great. So yeah, that's what I ended up at.
Cool. Yeah, man. Look, I would totally go back and listen to this album again, and I feel like this is one of those, like, it's so hard to give a rating to something for like 1 week of listening to it. After like rating other albums that we've lived with for 20 years of our lives, right? So this is one of those that I felt like if I revisited a year down the line, I might give this a better score. But for now, I feel like this is a good, strong record, and I would give it a 7.8.
Jason.
Go ahead,
Alright.
Fossil.
This
Is it
like,
going
and
to break into the 8s?
I'm going to echo a lot of what everybody kind of said. This, I usually do not listen to albums start to finish. I usually pick and choose the songs that I like. I add them to my playlist, and that's the way I listen to albums. This album is an exception to the rule. I will jam this whole album and just cut off the last 2 songs. Anytime that I want to just listen to something in the background, besides like just my favorites list, this will be one of the albums that I would listen to. I think it has a lot of just, you're just doing other stuff and you just want to headbang in the background to something that just sounds really good and has decent production, and it doesn't do anything, in my opinion, that would just make you have one of those moments where you're like, oh god, where's the phone so I can skip this fucking song.
Yeah.
This is that album. My score is a 7.9.
Hey,
Mm.
all right.
It's a great. It's borderline great. I would say that the one problem with this album is while it is chock full of what I would consider really strong songs, it doesn't have a Sanitarium or Inner Sandman. It doesn't have a defining song where you're just
Yeah.
like, holy shit, this one song will sell 10 million albums.
Well,
Like, and that's the unfortunate part of it.
I don't think that was what they were going for.
No, and I agree, but like you hope to have one of those monster hits.
Yeah.
Now, I do have a question to pose to the group. None of us had heard this album. Now, for me personally, back in the day, this is the type of music that I listened to in the early 90s. Never came across this album. Now, besides Dave, we do like this genre of music in other bands. I'm curious, do we like this album because we'd never heard it and we like that style? Or do you think you might have liked this album back in the day when you did listen to those other bands that are in this vein?
I think I would have liked it back then. Like I think that'd have been something that if it came across, because I mean I liked Manson then, and so I mean this is kind of in the ballpark of Manson. So I feel like if this came across, I think the same. Maybe I like a couple different songs off the record, but overall I think this would have been something I would have jammed.
As a teenager, I was moody as hell. I would have eaten this album up.
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah, see, that's the boat I'm in. I listened to music back then because I was pissed off at everything.
Yes.
And this if I had come across this then, I probably would have really liked it back then.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know if we were liking it now because we're nostalgic for it, or if we like it because it's good on its own. But I think it's a little bit of both.
I think it is too. For me.
For me, I actually would say the opposite. Like in high school, I was jamming, a lot more death metal, a lot heavier metal than this, especially like aggressive vocals and just speed. And I wouldn't, I don't think I would have enjoyed this at all. Like I don't think I would have let myself enjoy it at that time.
I was just curious. It's something that I was thinking about a few days ago. When I was jamming this, and I was just like, I wonder if I was just if I'm being nostalgic for it, or if it's just because I liked this style of music back in the day, and I still do.
Well, hey, they got 15 other albums.
Look, I'm not gonna lie, dude. I'm gonna check out to see what they have after this album because, from what I understand, this is kind of the genre, the direction they went.
Yes.
I don't know how many albums they went down this road before, if they've changed recently. So I'm curious.
According to one of the websites that I frequent, the next album after this is supposed to be has a higher average score than this one.
Huh.
Okay.
Well, I'm definitely gonna check it out.
I think it's called like Draconia or something. I don't know, something like that.
All right. So what was the overall score on that, Dave? It's like 7.5?
7.53. Yes, sir.
Yep.
Again, I know some people might see that and be like, "Oh no, 7.53. That's really low." There's four of us, right? Keep that in mind. Also, we consider 5 to be average. So 7.53 is 2.5 points higher than average. That's significant. Okay.
I'd be curious to see how many albums do we have that we all came that close to really agreeing on score wise, like point spread, on albums like maybe Justice and Master of Puppets are probably
Painkiller.
up there. Like, yeah, in terms of just like how close we all came to the same score.
Yeah, I mean we're all in the 7s. I don't know. It's hard. I'm like, because usually there was always, and this is why scores, a lot of scores end up being lower on average, because there's usually always one person who doesn't quite see things the same way. And that's just how it goes, right? That's how it's going to be when you have 4 scores. So, which is why we consider 5 an average.
Correct. Because it is the average between 1 and 10. That's weird.
Yeah, that's how it is weird. That is weird. I think the best thing to do though for those that actually watch this far into our reviews is I wouldn't pay so much attention to the average score between the 4 of us. Is once you get to know us, right? Is just take each of our own individual scores and based on what we like and what we say about the record.
Yeah.
As kind of 4 separate mini reviews that we're all just recording together.
Yeah. Look, I think the big thing for us making 5 average instead of 7 is it just makes us all feel better, if you know what I mean. Well, hey, if you like the video, go ahead and hit the like, hit the subscribe. We're putting out weekly metal content right now. We got metal reactions, metal reviews, metal time machines, and metal brackets, and all kinds of other cool shit. And hey, in the meantime, live long and prosper.
Take it easy, everybody.
7 is bigger than 5.
Peace.